Hey everyone, John Bose here, Chair of the Plymouth County Democratic League. I am coming to you tonight to talk about the process of how elections work. As you all know, we have a great opportunity this November 6th to take back the Congress and the Senate, and because of that it's been called the Blue Wave. Now, the part of the process that I want to talk about tonight is your role in making this Blue Wave happen. It's vitally important that you volunteer and work on campaigns this election season so that we can make sure that we take the Congress and the Senate to check the power of the president. Now, the part of the election process that I'm going to start with is probably the most important. It is called the GOTV scale, and what that means is the get out to vote scale. So what this number scale is determining the value an individual voter has based on who they are supporting in the election. So let's take a look at this. So the GOTV scale is a 1 through 5 scale based on the actual voter support. So if a person is supporting your candidate, you rate them as a 1, which I'll indicate with a happy face, or if they're not supporting your candidate, you rate them as a 5, which I'll indicate with a frowny face. Now, anyone that is undecided, meaning that they have not picked a candidate, that is a 3, which I'll represent with a neutral face. Now, in between the scale is basically anyone that is leaning towards your candidate is a 2, anyone leaning away from your candidate is a 4. Now, all this information comes from databases that are generally referred to as voter files. And this voter file has all the information that's been collected on every single voter in the entire known universe. And each party has developed this voter file independent of each other and maintain it. So inside the voter file there's demographic information as well as basic voting habits. Now what they do is they look for everyone that is a 1 and a 2, and that gets added into the supporter file. Now, when you're going through and you're talking to voters, you're basically grouping the 1s and 2s together, and then you're also grouping the 4s and 5s together. And the purpose behind this is so that you can basically break up the constituents and divide the voters into people who are supporting you and people who are not supporting you. Now, ultimately, what happens is that you want every one of the people who are 2s to go out and vote, of course, at the ballot box. And what people don't realize is that most elections are over well before the actual ballots are cast. Because what happens is in the last month, they take these 1s and 2s and total them up. And they take these 1s and 4s and 5s and they total those up. Now, if the total number of supporters is higher than the total number of detractors, the election's over. But on the other hand, if you have the reverse happen, which is that you have more detractors than supporters, for instance, you have, let's say, 301 versus 113, well, then you're going to target these neutral voters and try to convince them to come over to your side. But basically what you're trying to do is get as many 1s and 2s to the election day and cast their ballot, and if that is what happens, then you will be successful on election day and you will come out with a win. So this is the basics. We rate voters on a scale of 1 through 5. What we need your help with is talking to voters and helping us judge their level of support. So anyone that supports our candidates will rate as a 1. Anyone that doesn't support our candidates will rate as a 5. Now, it's very important to understand that a 5 is as good as a 1. Why do I say that? Well, if you identify somebody who's supporting a candidate, they go into the supporter database. And that's hugely important because we'll call them on election day to remind them to vote. But on the other hand, if you identify somebody as a 4 or a 5, that's just as important as 1, because they will get out of our database, which means we'll stop wasting time and resources trying to contact them. So when you rate somebody as a 4 or a 5, you're actually saving the campaign money. When you rate them as a 1 or a 2, you're adding them to the voter database for reminders to make sure they vote on election day. Anyone rated as a 3 is hugely important, because if you end up in a deficit during that last month that you have more detractors than supporters, you can go to those 3s and try to focus your energy in your message on convincing them to support your candidate. Now, we're going to be knocking doors and making phone calls. We also want you to talk to your friends and neighbors. But the most important thing to remember is you need to make sure you ask people for the vote. If they say, yes, I'm going to support your candidate, mark them as a 1. If they say, no, I'm not supporting your candidate, mark them as a 5. Regardless, record the information and get it back to us. And make sure you try to talk to all the people who are undecided, the 3s, and get them into our database. This is John Bose. We've got tons of activity happening this weekend, and we need your help. So please consider going out and knocking some doors, talking to the voters, or joining one of our phone banks during the week. And please, talk to your friends and neighbors. Get them on board, and once you do that, please use the link below to report that they're supporting us or they're not supporting us. You have a nice night. This is John Bose. This blue wave does not happen without you. Thank you so much. You're still here? Well, if you want more content, click on the link above to subscribe. It says subscribe. But seriously, it's over. Go knock some doors. Go!